Welcome back to Sports Leadership Exchange. My distinguished guest today is Paul Thompson, manager of Academy Talent ID with the Vancouver Whitecaps, and we're looking forward to diving into this conversation, hearing about Paul's journey, where Paul is at, and him sharing all the things of working with youth players at a professional club. Paul, welcome today.
Yeah, good to see you again, Matt. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to speaking to you and then, of course, interacting with whoever's listening.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. So, Paul, I'm going to dive straight in so our listeners can get their notepads going straight away and their pencils. Um, when did you get into coaching and why did you want to get into coaching?
Yeah, I started coaching quite young. I sometimes say I was lucky that I was like an okay player. It was quite clear to me at a young age that playing football was not going to be like a realistic avenue for me. So I started coaching in high school, in my last couple of years of high school. Um, I was coaching with the club that I played with essentially with some of the younger teams and then moved into the like they called it competitive at the time and then um, yeah, kind of carried on from there. I went to university, the University of Winnipeg for physical education. That was like my, kind of my base. I always thought it was important to have a base of, uh, you know, knowledge and another job potentially because when I was going through coaching in Winnipeg, there wasn't that many full-time jobs. So I kind of, with a counselor I had in university, or sorry, in high school, we kind of were sitting and talking about what would you like to do when you grow up, and said, well, I like soccer, I like coaching. I'm not sure about the pathway for coaching, but I said, well, you could be a physical education teacher, and they kind of go hand in hand. I had a few really good physical education teachers too in my high school, so um, they were kind of the cool teachers, I thought, and I kind of wanted to be like them. And um, yeah, essentially, when I was going through university, I was also doing my coaching badges
Yeah.
and kind of moving up the coaching ranks, and that led me to where I'm at now.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. I love that. So it was a journey. And when did it really click with you, Paul, that you know what? I would like to do this full time, or if possible, I'd like to do this full time. Was there a moment when that happened on that journey?
I was lucky. One of my mentors, the TD of Manitoba soccer at the time, saw me coaching in our provincial team setup, our provincial team program. And at the time, I was just finishing university, and he brought me on as a programs manager. So I was doing a lot of admin and operation type of stuff, and then coaching a little bit on the side. But
Yeah.
he, I think he liked me. He thought I was a passionate young coach, and he saw an opportunity when that role opened up to bring me in there. Again, because I have a university background, I was able to pick up some of the operations and admin pieces. Was pretty straightforward for me. So
Yeah. And then getting that role, what were some of the skill sets that you noticed bit by bit and more by more that you were starting to enjoy, which were adding to the component of you being a soccer coach?
yeah, I mean, obviously being on the field, working with players, the banter that you have, the interactions, the smiles that you have when uh, either you put on a good session and the players enjoy it and they're improving, or you work with a player and they you can see they actually appreciate that you've taken the time to help them. But I also started to enjoy kind of the planning parts, planning sessions, but also planning programs, building a structure for things, um, thinking about the end in mind. I um, started to understand the importance of planning, being prepared, thinking about a year program, not just soccer, but whatever it was, coach education, club licensing. Because I was in Manitoba, smaller province, you get to do a little bit of everything. You get a jack of all trades
Yeah.
where I think in some of the bigger provinces, you specify you just do coach ed or you just do club licensing or player programs. Where I got to do everything, which um, again, I think it was really good for me as a young person. Maybe sometimes I wish I could have specialized a little bit more in some things, but I'm still young, so I still have time to go into those things a little bit more.
Yeah. And you know, one thing just listening to you straight away is you took you went into these opportunities with the right mindset, and then even when you were in the opportunities, you still had that growth mindset to keep learning and keep adding those skill sets to the current tools that you had, which is fantastic. You mentioned coach ed, being on the field, club licensing, which is a variety of roles that, you know, most TDs or most sports leaders have to, you know, deal with nowadays. Which the fact that you were dealing with that from such a young age kind of gives you the head up on a lot of people who are doing it now and trying to do it. So I think that was great. So let's fast forward then from Manitoba. Um, you now went to Vancouver Whitecaps. Tell me about that transition and yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I spent about 5 years working for Manitoba Soccer, and then
yeah,
got the opportunity to come to Vancouver. Um, Again, to be frank, it was tough from a social and personal side, leaving my family. I was lucky enough that I met my wife in Winnipeg, but she's from Vancouver, so I had
yes,
some
yeah,
connection there already. But I had a really tight friend circle. Um, and I kind of went to just her family basically, and then had to kind of reestablish that. So there was some times where it was tough, kind of hanging around like what to do all day until this training. Um, Even getting used to the schedule was a little bit tough for me because we would train in the morning most of the time with the Rex or the NDC it was called in Manitoba, and then we would go into the office and do our office work, and then we'd kind of be done by 4 o'clock. Where when I moved to Vancouver, I was doing our academy centers, some of our regional academy centers all over the Lower Mainland, and they were like 5 to 8, 4 to 9 kind of things. So getting used to you're kind of what's the word you do a little bit of work, you do some office work, and then you kind of have some downtime, and it's like, but you're not really off because you got the sessions later, and you still are in the back of your mind, you're thinking about them. So it took me a little while to get used to that. um, and then again, I went from working in our NDC, which is our good level of player, committed focused player, to some academy centers that were kind of motivated players, but some of them were more, they were there because their parents signed them up, or they wanted to be a part of the Whitecaps, but didn't really know what it took to be a high level player. So it was challenging at times, but I had a mentor here in Vancouver who used to say, like, if you can improve some of those less motivated, less skilled players, you can actually improve them and get them to enjoy the sessions. Then it'll be easy once you start working with motivated players, because they're half the battle's already kind of there. Um so yeah, some challenges, but again, I had some family, I had good mentors and bosses. That's one thing I've really enjoyed about Vancouver. You're expected to do your work and you have your tasks that you have to do, but it's not so like you have to do this at this day or this. It's not like a micromanaged situation. So um, I quite enjoy that freedom. I think it works well for me. Uh, so yeah, those are some of the challenges. Of course, a lot of good moments, a lot of being around the first team or the second team or the academy. Seeing more coaches work, because again, in Manitoba we had some good coaches, but there's only a couple programs where they worked in, so you only maybe saw a couple coaches
yeah,
periodically. Where it's the same now, where I can watch 3 or 4 academy sessions in one day, and then I can watch the second team, and I can watch the first team, and then there's the female program, and you're kind of immersed in this you know academy or professional football setup.
yeah. So there's a few questions. So and I love what you're sharing, Paul. Um, Coming from Manitoba to, say, the Whitecaps, from a sports leadership, or should I say a leader, what were some of the big things you noticed straight away? And I know you mentioned earlier about possibly working with players who, as we say sometimes, they want to be there. But what were some of the other things that you noticed being at a professional club? Like, yeah, now I see what that next level looks and feels like.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've started to learn and work with more is how you work with players over longer periods of time and the amount of detail that you need to start delivering into your sessions because if you work with a player twice a week, you can kind of give them general
Uh,
sessions, attacking, 1v1. But then as you work with a team and you work with players over 200 sessions a year, like, okay, you can start adding more layers, attacking from the side, attacking central, when pressure comes from the front, when pressure comes from the back, when there's a covering defender, when there's not. So I think that uh, is a skill that I had to kind of improve on as I started to work, especially when I worked with the teams a little bit more. Or I was like, okay, we're not just doing 1v1s today. How did it go on the weekend? Where are we at in our cycle, like our planning cycle? And if we're working on 1v1s, let's make sure it's not the same one we did last week. And let's make sure it's either improving something that we need to from the game or just improving something in general that, okay, these four players need to work on this. These four players need to work on this. So let's split the group, but not just do the same exercise. You guys will start from the side. You guys will start from the back. Those types of things are things that I've started to dive into detail more now. The other thing, probably, I'm actually experiencing this right now because I'm working with our one of our older teams, and you have more staff. So a lot of the planning has to be done beforehand. It has to be like really targeted about the staff. So you're working with staff and you're working with players. You're not just working with, when it was me and you on the field, we kind of had our routines. We kind of
yes,
knew he's gonna do the strikers, I'm gonna
yes,
do the defenders,
yeah,
he's gonna do attacking, I'm gonna
yeah.
do the defending. Um, the more staff that you work with, especially if they're you know sometimes we have two staff, sometimes we have four staff because some of the academy guys want to get some extra reps, and so planning planning for that, but also communicating that, not just assuming, oh, these guys are all good coaches, they know what they're doing. Everyone knows what they're doing, but they need to know what they're doing today exactly at exactly the right time. So
Massive point, massive. And I think I see that so often on my travels. I see that so often where the communication is lower than the assuming, where the assuming is, oh, and you just said it. Here's a good coach. Yeah, we'll be good. Without actually being purposeful and saying intentionally, this is what it's going to look like. These are the roles and responsibility. And this is, we're aiming to get this out of the session with the players and also aiming to get this out of the session for us as coaches, as coach educators as well, right? Which is important. So I love that you said that, Paul. So give me, or give our listeners, what does your role encompass right now? Because we've got the talent identification in there, but give us an insight into what that actually entails for you currently.
yeah, and that's one of the things I like a lot about my current role. Which again, it took me a little while to get used to it. I was coaching a lot before, and now I coach some of the time. But then there's a lot of times of the year where I focus more on either IDing talent, evaluating talent, or recruitment of talent. It is becoming a little bit more open in terms of like the MLS and where you can get players from, and there's obviously some homegrown rules, but there's also, once you fill up your kind of list of homegrown, then you can start looking in other areas where you maybe weren't as much before. So there's a little bit of recruitment now. So the way it actually works is in the fall is where I ID talent, especially the younger players. Uh, I'm scouting a lot. I'm going to games. I'm doing club visits. I'm on the phone. I'm video. Um, you know, try to leave no stone unturned in terms of finding players. And then in the winter towards the spring is more like we're evaluating talent. So I've seen the top players. Some of them maybe have come in for a camp or two, and then I'm starting to narrow it down. So then I'm going to watch them again, but I'm more focused on them. Maybe I'm going to visit them again. Maybe I'm meeting with them online like this, and okay, like this is your IDP that I see. These are some things that you can work on. Let's. How do you think you could do it? Giving them some feedback there, because the one thing I think about a lot is the players in our academy have a lot of resources, have a lot of support, and it's sometimes players that are really close that we think have the ability. Sometimes they need a little bit of support, so when they
Yeah.
do come in for their evaluations, they're showing the things that I think they have, we think they have. Um, and then in the spring, especially the first part of the spring, is where we'll get to the final rosters. Uh, so, so that's a big part of it. And then once we solidify our rosters, we normally have a couple months where like programs are still running, but we've had to do the rosters a little bit early because we have a school based program and we have to get them registered, and that's where I'll still be scouting a little bit, but I'll kind of slide into coaching a little bit more. I'll work with our academy teams, our uh, BC League One team, or even our second team a little bit,
Yeah.
shadow a bit there, and kind of
Hmm.
keep my coaches' tools sharp and
Yeah.
those things. So that's kind of my annual cycle, I call it now.
Yeah.
Throughout the year, I have some administrative, some operations tasks, planning camps, making sure players are getting invites, and updating our database, those types of things.
Yeah. I really, really love that, Paul. And you mentioned quite a few things there that really touch home with me, especially the different phases. It's not just one phase throughout the whole 12 months, it's different phases. And you mentioned bringing, identifying players, and then not only identifying players, then, following up with players to see where they're at, which I really love because, as we know, someone could perform today, they might not perform today. Someone could be early in their development compared to someone else, right? So I love the fact that you mentioned that you have these different phases throughout the year where you're touching base with the players on a variety of different things. It's not see them once or twice and then that's it and move on to someone else. So I really, really love that. Now I'm gonna ask a wide question, and I say it's wide because when I get asked it, myself, I've got probably one to five things, and then the list could go on and on. So when you say you're identifying players, what are some of the top things? Because this is where it could get so long. But what are some of the top things you look for, or as an organization you're looking for when you're watching these young souls?
Yeah, I've because now I've just kind of finished my second year of just focusing on talent ID, or mainly focusing on it,
Yeah,
where in years past I was coaching the youngest group, so I was doing a bit of scouting, but it was mostly for just like the intake group, and
yeah,
now I do it for the entire academy. So the first year I was looking at it like a U14, like an intake coach. I was like, oh, he could be good. He has something, and I see potential there. I was looking at it like a coach where
yeah,
I could maybe I'm a bit arrogant. I'm like, if we get him for 6 months in our environment, he's a player. And then the list kind of got bigger and bigger. And this year through some reflection, working with the staff, is like, okay, my job is not to you know say which player could be good in 5 years. Yeah, there's a little bit of that, but I also just need to look at, okay, who are the best 20 players in each age group right now, and spend a little bit more time focusing on them. I had to kind of take my coach's hat off and kind of put my scouting hat on. Um, in terms of what we look for, first thing is always like impact. Like, what do they do that's special? What's their super strengths? Um, is it technically is it tactically, again, for younger players not so much, but are they quick brain, quick making decisions, intelligence? Obviously the physical side is big. again, there's lots of different profiles within the physical profiles that we look at, but they normally have to have some physical tools. Um, and then for us, a big part is like, and that's why that second phase where I start to get to know them a lot more is really important. Is like, do you love it? Are you passionate about it? Are you going to do extra work? Are you going to actually have a growth mindset? Because if you're going to stay where you're at U13, 14, 15, like it's not going to be good enough. So, what is it one of those things? I can't say.
Yeah,
It's always those four,
yeah,
5 things kind of floating around. And um, I have the things that I think are important. Like for me, it's that growth mindset. But if a kid is really behind technically and physically, then there's only so much you can do as well.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so for us, it's those four things. We have kind of summarized as like the DNA of a player, which is kind of the resilience, the adaptability, the the physical profile, the enjoyment. Then we talk a lot about technical habits, and then we talk a lot about the living up to the academy identity that we have, which is essentially we want players that can play forward. We want players that are difference makers. We want players that transition. That's a big one now, like that quick transition, either physically transition or mentally transition
yeah.
very quickly.
Okay.
Um, so those are kind of the areas that we look for. But again, because I'm not going to pick a team most of the time. Okay, for the younger guys, I am, but we don't have teams at any one age group.
Yeah,
We just have like double banded age groups. So we're really just looking for the most standout impact. You know, clearly have tools and ability and talent players. We're not too worried about the team. Okay, every once in a while we got to make sure we have maybe a center back or a left back just to make sure the team has some balance, but we'll just rotate players through if we have to. They'll just try different positions so that they end up getting better long term or they get more comfortable in other positions. And uh, yeah, so a lot of answers there, but
yeah. Good.
it's as much as it's complicated, it's also not complicated. Like, are they creating goals? Are they creating assists? Are they defending goals? Are they having big impacts in the game? And then let's grab those players, and then let's start to narrow it down once we kind of have those standout players already grouped up together.
And has there ever been a time, Paul, where you've selected players, and as we both know, players different develop at different rates, physically, mentally, everything, right? You look at the five corners, four corners. Um, what has been some of the adjustments you've made as you yourself, or even the coaches you're around, when it comes to that? Because sometimes someone can be here today and then down here tomorrow. What are some of the leadership routes and how you've dealt with that? Because that's a reality, right?
Yeah, again, I think a couple things. One is that we can't always do this, but we do try to give players 2 years. It's not
Okay.
always possible
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we have so few players and
Yeah.
so many players out there. But
Yeah.
if it's kind of in between, we'll generally lean to, okay, let's give them one more year. Let's make sure that what we saw 9, 10 months ago isn't just going away because they're having a tough time adjusting to Vancouver, or they're going through a growth spurt, or maybe they're not, like they just we think they're this position but they're not, and we need to give them some time in another position. So I would say that's one thing. I think another thing we've tried really hard to do now is uh, talk a lot about technical habits. So those are the 7 things that we feel like once a player kind of goes through their growth spurt, like if they have a solid technical base, um, then they're more likely to be able to survive/excel at senior football. Where I think sometimes if you focus too much on physical traits in that 13 to 15, 16 age group, you can kind of be misled a little bit because you can have 13-year-olds that are totally on different ends of the scale. Like some are kind of still boys and some are almost men, physically at least. Um, so there's some things, and then I think just the fact that now we have, and we've always had it, but now we have a little bit more staff that are a bit more removed from the team, the day to day. So again, we all work together. We have a really good, I would say almost friendship with the staff between the
Yeah.
coaches, director of coaching, the technical director, myself. Um, so we get along really good, but we all have different opinions, and sometimes it's one thing I've noticed now is like, I'll go away for a week or two because I'm on the road scouting. I'm scouting locally, and then I'll come back and coach will kind of say something about this guy, but I'm like, oh, actually, I think he's doing okay. Like, so sometimes that different opinion and that fresh perspective.
Yeah.
Again, I'm pretty well connected to the teams. I feel that's a big part of my job too, is to watch and get to know our players and work with our current players as well as the players that we're evaluating, because it's not fair for me to say, hey, I think we should bring this guy in and remove this guy if I don't know both of those guys really well. So
I love that. I love that. And I'm assuming there's a part in there where it's the mental part, getting to know the person before the athlete. I'm assuming, again, I shouldn't assume, but is that part of the process as well when you're looking at people, players? Yeah.
it's a part of the process for sure. It's one of the areas that I'm trying to get better at, because if I come and watch you, and then you come to a tryout, and then maybe you come to a second tryout, it's you can be good for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Do you know what I mean? You can kind of fake a little bit of your habits. So I'm trying to find ways, and that's something that my bosses push me on a lot, is like, how is their character? What's the mentality like? And I need to keep working on how I get into that. I'm starting to build some kind of intake forms and are trying to get to know, okay, like how much does a player actually want this? Is he willing to sit down for an hour and do some of these tasks that I've asked them to do? Do more, interviews with the players, their families. Once I get to know them and they've kind of seen me out and about, sometimes I'll be out with my daughter and my dog, but I'm beside a soccer field and I'm kind of doing a sneaky assessment. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've done those in
Yeah.
your day. Um,
Yeah.
so again, do you really know for sure 100%? I still find it hard to tell
Yeah.
until you actually go, okay, we're at J Cup and you got to play 5 games in 8 days, and you're in a hotel and the food's okay at best, and you got to kind of grind it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Or again, you don't really see this, but because they're all the best players in their team and they play wherever they want, not wherever they want to play, but I'm sure they play a lot in the positions they like playing. And then all of a sudden you come to us and, well, you're the fourth striker, so you're gonna have to play some winger. You might have to play some fullback. Hey, let's try you at center back. And then all of a sudden the player's like, well, I don't see myself there. How do they adapt? How do they adjust? Do they, even if they're not as comfortable with it, do they still try to be adaptable? Do they, kind of trust in the process that, oh, the coaches are actually trying to help me here? So those are some things that, yeah, if you have any suggestions or any of the
Yeah.
listeners.
Yeah. Yeah. No, just listening to you and the things that I've done in the past and come to mind would be having questions that players have to from the beginning, answer on video, their own thoughts, processes, and then every month having a tool that players go into and rate themselves. What are they doing well at? What are they possibly struggling with? And what do they need help with? Having those kind of tools, I think monthly will start to help because, as we both know, you're training to a team, you're talking to a team, and depending on what's being said, how it's being said, some players will straight away. Some players, yeah, I hear you, coach. And it's just knowing them more and more and more. And um, again, it's not getting players accustomed to one way, it's getting them accustomed to different ways because, hey, if the hope is they're going to move on, and eventually get to the first team. They could be in the first team this year, and there's a certain coach there who goes about things a certain way, and because they've had the tool set from below, they now can adapt. Within 12 months, that could be a new coach coming in who's got a different way of doing things. And again, because they've had these things down below, the time and the processes to know how they work, what gets them ticking, how to approach them when they're going through a rough time. Some people need, you know, a little kick up the butt. Some need a little arm. Some need a time of reflect before they can then share what they need. So those would be little things straight away, Paul, and we can definitely jump on more after this. But yeah, I really love that. And that's why I wanted to ask because spoken to a few individuals now, and I'm starting to hear more and more. Some are doing it, some are not doing it. So it's always interesting to hear where individually we're at and as an organization where we're at as well, right?
Yeah, I'm just writing a few of these down here. Um,
Listen to you.
yeah, no, I think it's really. I'm glad you said it. It kind of reinforces like, okay, whatever the exact method is, keep working on that. But it's kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like, I need
Yeah,
as much as I'm an optimist and I love seeing all players grow.
yeah,
I need to, for my job now, I have to just focus on those ones that I think have the most potential, and then spend more time with them.
yeah,
That is something I think we've improved this year. I kind of said to the staff like, okay, last year maybe we saw each player 10 times.
yeah,
Now it's maybe 15 or 20 or 25 separate times. And now I'm keep thinking, okay, how do I get that to 25 or 30 times,
yeah.
especially for the ones that we think are going to come into the team next year.
Yeah, there's a variety of different tools and different mechanisms to be having those touch points. Because I know we do a lot on the soccer part, but we don't do enough. Sometimes I find anyway on the individual themselves. And once we know the individual, and you truly know the individual, yeah, it's a beautiful thing because then you're just matching everything. Instead of right now, we're trying to match this with, I think this is what they're like without knowing, right? So it's yeah, it's just always coming back to who's that individual because before they're an athlete, they're an individual. And if we don't find out the foundation, then yes, we've got B and C, but in order for us to get to D, we've got to start from A, right? So it's always good to really, especially nowadays with the tools that we have, you know, making players accountable, putting in some work, and just sharing their journeys, how where they're at, because it's too easy. You know, you get a group of kids and you say, "How's everyone doing?" And we know everyone's gonna go, "Yeah, I'm good." Right? Because one, I don't want to seem like I'm less than anyone. Two, if I am struggling, I don't want to be seen to be the weak link. And it's just making sure when everyone says I'm good, that they're really good and not just saying it because we've asked them in a team, possibly compared to maybe a one-on-one situation, right?
Yeah, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and again, keeps me questioning our processes, what we're doing, how do we improve. Again, not I'm not saying we don't have good process. I'm
Yeah.
not
Oh
happy
yeah.
with them, but
Yeah.
I'm I'm the same as you. I'm one of those guys where I'm like, okay, if it's good, let's make it very good. If it's very good, let's make it great, and
Exactly.
keep,
Right.
keep me up at night a little bit. But it's like a healthy anxiety, I would call it.
Yeah, and it's just adding to the tool sets that we have, right? Everything I always talk about, it's not taking away from what's already in place. And like you guys and yourself, fantastic. Again, these are just little things that you could possibly go, hey, let's add that into what we already have, which would be great, right? So just it adds to the value of what we're doing, right? Because we know definitely at club level, a lot of this isn't going on. It's more about I only need you to show up on game day and do what you need to do. Outside of that, I don't really care. So for me, when I'm always thinking of kids jumping from that now to the next level, somewhere within that next level, we're hoping that they start to get it. Because again, as they go up, especially at a club like yours, a professional, it doesn't get any easier. So what are we doing with them when we do have them at our level? That we know we are setting them up for success as an individual, as a person, as well as an athlete, right?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So
fantastic. So anyway, Paul, it's been a pleasure. We're definitely dragging you back on again if you have time, because
Always.
I always love these conversations, and I know a lot of our listeners, with what Paul shared, and even the little one tidbits I shared, that there's a lot of quality in there. And yeah, thank you so much, Paul.
Happy to be on, always happy to connect. And
Yeah,
yeah, if you have me again, if the demand is enough, I'm happy to be on again.
you'll be on, that's for sure. You'll be on. Well, thank you so much. Okay, Paul. Okay,
Speak to you soon. See ya.
thank you.